So, you know, it's sort of, I was like, I don't want you to feel like you're alone up there. And she's not. You got to take care of the kids in the house. You do that, I'm fine. So sort of divided and conquered for the next couple of weeks. So, yeah.
Well, I sure hope they can get it settled
I
without
hope so.
surgery.
I hope so. I hope so. But she's been happy with the care. It's been really
That's
good.
good.
Get a change of mindset.
All of that. So, yeah.
And so her mom lives in the area?
Yeah, they live in Franklin County.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're,
Another problem we have.
it's nice to have that because my parents are still in Raleigh and so they came this afternoon so I could get here and then her parents are on the way with her. And yeah, so it's, thank goodness for grandparents and plus the kids love it. Yeah, grandma and grandpa come over, they're good. Yeah, they're not worried about me or mom being home, right? They're like, grandma, grandpa, here, I'm set.
You're lucky to have all this support.
We're very lucky, very lucky. Yeah, very thankful. So, yeah, so thank you for asking. Appreciate it.
This is the first year in,
Federal judiciary.
I don't know if it's ever or in like forever, when there was the barbecue where it qualified as a qualifier program.
On my job.
Again, our systems, FBI.
So you're able to do that. And I mean, it used to.
So Deidreana.
When I was in college.
Assuming, okay.
I don't think we knew that.
They were also barbecue. So I worked as a sanitation.
Okay. Well, I think,
Good. Oh, my God.
I see.
It's totally different world, actually.
Might refer to bureaucrat. I started out in college.
But it used to be like in previous years, I mean, we would get 35,000.
And now I'm in local.
But
Levels of government you can be.
out of state.
Well, there's your household government. Yeah. With your wife and your kids. There you go. That's right. That's an important. It is, absolutely. Just remember. My little.
Thousands.
Ah,
It's nice.
I'll go back and find that.
How about you? How is the Joko and Clayton?
Sheriff Freeman, this is Lee. I think we'll be ready to go in a minute or two whenever you're ready, ma'am.
Yeah, I see.
it's look like her audio's.
Oh, it was. It came out about our commission.
There it is. It just popped out.
My first day of vacation. Well, okay, my second day, the first week. Monday. But at least he gave me a heads up on Sunday night. It was coming.
I didn't realize these charges.
Sheriff Freeman, I think we're ready to go if you're ready on your end. I know you're virtual. We can. Madam Chair, it sounds like you don't have a good internet connection. I'm sorry. Do you want to try to call in?
Call the meeting to order and get a roll call for attendance.
Yes, ma'am. We'll have Chantel do that.
All right, good evening, everyone. I will say the jurisdiction. Please let me know if you are present. Aberdeen. Archer Lodge. Chatham County.
Mike Dasher, present.
City of Durham.
Present.
Thank you. Durham County. Garner.
Hey, right here.
Hillsborough,
Kathleen Ferguson, Hillsborough, present.
Johnson County,
Here.
Lee County,
Lee County, Bill Carver, present.
Moore County, Orange County,
Pellegrini here.
Pittsburgh,
Pamela Baldwin, Pittsburgh, present.
Princeton,
Don Ryan's here.
Sanford,
Rebecca Salmon, City of Sanford here.
thank you, and Wake County. Anyone I may have missed? All right, thank you, and we do have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you. And the next order of business on our agenda is that approval of the minutes.
No, ma'am, that's a presentation on the 2022 Durham and Harnett County Essential Single Family Rehabilitation Assistance Policy. And Lindsay Whitson will take care of that, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay, yeah. These are just two programs that our housing team administers. These are 3-year cycles. And so our next cycle is starting in 2022 for the Essential Single Family Rehab program for Durham County and Harnett County. And attached in the agenda packets were assistance policies and procurement policy. And it's just standard practice to have these signed and approved prior to us being able to then expend the funds for both these programs. These are funds that are federal funds passed through the state, through the North Carolina Housing Finance Authority. But happy to answer any questions.
This is similar to programs that we also do in, what are the other counties that we do this in? Orange County, Lee County, Chatham County. I think we're getting ready to start in Wake.
There's 6, yeah.
So there's a number of counties that we do this for. So this is a 3-year cycle that we have to do.
And they're all designated ESFR, basically.
Yes, sir. Same programs. So Commissioner Carver, just for your benefit, this is a great example of where the COG can provide a service so that each county doesn't individually have to try to figure out how to administer the same grant. We do it on behalf of the counties and help save you some time and let your staff do some other things, and we'll take care of it for you.
Thank you.
You need a motion?
This will be consent agenda. Yep.
Just calling for a motion for a consent agenda.
Yeah, this, Madam Chair, we'll just place, this is already placed on the consent agenda for approval.
Okay. I am walking in the door.
Okay. Hey there.
Oh, wow.
You went live.
Apologies.
Next item is data. Give you a chance to go have some dinner.
Okay. So the next item we have is the new data website demonstration. And I am Adam Spillman.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me see if share screen works.
You're co-host now, Adam, so you should be good.
Okay. So tell me if you can see that. Can you see the website?
I can. Hold on.
It's on the Zoom, but not up here in the conference room. So we're switching up. Gonna switch an input here.
Okay. While they're bringing that up, I could go ahead and talk about a few things.
Yep, that's fine, Adam. Go ahead.
And I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you tonight. I was actually on my way. I guess I got about a quarter of the way to Durham there and had to turn around with some issues. But basically, what I want you to keep in mind while we're looking at this is everything, of course, is sort of subject to change. The physical appearance as we go through the rebranding between now and Christmas, everything from the logo, the name, the colors, all of that stuff is sort of, I guess you might say, temporary. I think it looks good, but that's all relatively easy for us to change in the future. So mostly I wanted to concentrate on the different sorts of data types that we can display here, and also sort of reinforce the idea that, this isn't just data that we ourselves have generated. We will also be linking to external data and other data websites that we think are maybe a little bit more difficult to use. And it would be nice in the case of this website to sort of have like a one-stop shopping, something that not just our members can use to sort of concentrate, good data that they use on a regular basis, sort of concentrated in one location, but also internal staff members, just thinking of some of the emails that me and Matt and others get on a weekly basis. If some of those statistics and facts and figures and things were easier to find, where you didn't necessarily have to navigate the census website or something, which is a good website and it's well designed, but there's just so much stuff there that's not entirely relevant to our territory here. And just wanted to make that more convenient, sort of tying it back to the new organizational principles. That ties back to service to our members and data-driven decision-making, pretty good. But, as the website is built out, we'll tie to, all of those eventually, and also a number of the core values as well. So just let me know when you can see it on the big screen.
We can see it.
We can see it.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
So, one, appearance related thing, these were all pictures from around the area that we were able to acquire. They have free use licenses, so we can do whatever we want with them. And of course, that's all subject to change as well. I tried to find some pictures in various member communities, not just, every single one of them being in Raleigh. But all of these sections are not built out yet. We wanted to have a section for each group here at the COG. The ones that are most built out are probably transportation and housing, and also the census section. But again, keep in mind, this is all subject to change. If you looked at some of the websites that Lee sent out earlier this week, this format that you're looking at here seems to be reflected in a lot of other sort of data warehouse, data clearinghouse type websites, that are already doing what we're trying to do here. The map section, just to start off with, that was sort of a test to see what we could do, the different ways that we could display information to people using the website. So for example, we can display ArcGIS Online maps directly on the browser, where people don't have to actually go to ArcGIS Online in order to manipulate them. Or if we wanted sort of a map gallery that they could just click on them directly and download a PDF that they might want to print out or email to somebody, or, it opens in another tab they might be able to use. Or partners that we have that do have ArcGIS pages that we can link to them and go to their ArcGIS Online in this case, the DOT, they have their own dashboard, okay, which, that's, like I was saying, that's not something that we're trying to duplicate. That's just something that we're trying to put in a convenient location. And then, of course, maps that other staff here at the COG have created in our own ArcGIS page. If we don't want to host them in the website itself, then it can open in another tab, and you can, navigate from there. Also, just looking at different ways that the website can be formatted. Again, this is all subject to change. Some people like, a little bit of fanciness, like scrolling banners and things like that. PDFs don't have to be downloaded. They can also be, open in a separate tab. Like I mentioned, that this could be something that was printed out or saved or emailed if you wanted to. Let's see, that's just the footer there at the bottom. Did anybody have any questions about this particular page with the maps or the different data formats?
I just have one question. I don't understand why you didn't use Durham as the example. That's all.
And so in this first draft, and we can, looks like I'm doing okay on time. Just stop me if I start to ramble or go a little bit too long. There was I've got some stuff, scattered around here. One thing that we wanted to demonstrate was the ability to insert pie charts and things directly into the web page. That's the wrong one. This was just a demonstration. But so Squarespace is the host here that comes with a variety of tools embedded. I don't think it really qualifies as like a full-blown like dashboard, but that you can display data in some fancier ways like this, like housing units at area median income. You can generate graphics like this within the web page without having to import them from like a third party. So you could do charts like this. You could do line graphs, things like that. We have some options that we're looking at for creating like animated data dashboards. Even ArcGIS Online is
I think you have a question here in the audience.
Yes, this is Kathleen Ferguson, because you were talking about dashboards. I mean, is this something where we can utilize Tableau or another data visualization package to be able to give some, users some flexibility on selecting data points to visualize and how they want to look at it?
Yeah, exactly. There's a ton of those out there. Tableau is a well-known one. There's dozens of them, if not more. SAS, I guess, would be another good example.
SAS would be overkill.
Yeah, and actually, there's a lot about Tableau that I don't understand myself. It's relatively easy to use. I think it interfaces also with R, and but yeah, that's definitely something that we've had multiple conversations about. If that was something that the COG needed, or how it would be incorporated here. Also, ArcGIS Online has a capability to create things like that we would be able to embed, like what you saw on the previous page. We can also some dashboards that are public use, like I think here I had inserted one from the census, which this is also powered by Esri, but this is the a thing that the Census Bureau is happy for you to insert into your own web page. It doesn't have any sort of like a copyright restriction or usage restriction like that. So there might be some things like this that already exist that we could sort of concentrate here. But back to your question, yeah, Tableau was one of several things that we've had in internal discussions. I know they occasionally maybe send Lindsay some emails trying to, like promote a coupon or a special deal or whatever. So whenever something like that pops up, we discuss it in the next meeting after that.
It is easier than R and SAS by a long shot, without the overkill. And they do have some options. They've got a low cost platform and some of them more expensive. But like, it's just more flexible than like JReview SAS, and then without the overkill.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at a lot of different options. And I think I really appreciate the work that Adam and Matt and several other members of the staff are doing. And I think with the remaining time, what we really want to get from you all is, regional councils across the nation, and that's why we sent you the examples, are known as regional data hubs. And we're actually designated by the state as the regional data center. And so with the adoption of the new strategic plan and wanting to make sure that we're doing things around data and data-driven decisions, developing our own data hub is a high priority. And so more than just sort of the design, we really want to hear from you what would be helpful in a data hub to meet the needs of the local governments in the region. So would just love to hear just ideas, what kind of data would be helpful, either for us to display or to aggregate or to whatever. The sky's the limit right now. So, and then once we get that idea, we can let Adam and staff go after it, and we can then bring you a more refined sort of hub for you to really chew into. So Adam, it's okay. Maybe we'll let the executive committee sort of give us some feedback on ideas of data.
Yeah, certainly. And if you don't think of something tonight, but maybe this got the wheels in your head started turning, and the links that Lee sent out earlier this week, definitely feel free, just blow up my email with every single idea that you have. You can't send me too many ideas, just anything and everything feedback wise would be helpful.
I know that Bill Carvey have a question. I also have a question.
I'm just a kind of a concept question. If I'm sitting back there in my county and I have a need for data that's maybe not on your web, can I make a request and then have it formulated? And I would think you'd want it to have more general application than just Lee County, but if it's something we could use. For example, we're working right now on some justice involved issues, and being able to pick data from more than just Lee County might be helpful. But I don't have a specific question for Adam tonight as it relates to that. But anyway, you would have assets to be able to generate that data and put it on the web.
That's a great question. And so a lot of times we'll get questions around needing data, and we realize, oh, we've got this data and we're not sure everybody really knows about it. So part of this too is to make member governments and others aware of what we've got. And if we don't see it and you need something, we still want you to come to us and ask, because then we can try to figure out how to display or get it. That's part of our role as the data center, is to find opportunities to get data and share data with our local government. So absolutely.
And similarly along those lines, I was going to ask who's the audience? Because if it's the general public versus just the member government, like, staff and electeds, then making sure that these, even our website is accessible to other folks' websites so that they can actually do links in, and however that works, making sure that staff.
The idea is the audience is both. And so I think it's certainly being tailored more toward the general public for their understanding, but we do also want our local government members to have what they need to do their work. But the other regional councils that have sites like this, it is a regional data hub that chambers and private businesses and the general public really recognize and use to get information that they need so they don't have to go hunting in lots of different places.
Great. I don't
Yeah,
see any questions. I'm checking online. I was just checking to see if there was
Yeah, if
anyone
there anything
raising
in
a
the chat.
hand online. Don't want to miss them.
No.
But yes, I'm sorry to cut you off, Adam.
Yeah, I was just going to say, once upon a time when I worked in economic development, those sorts of data requests were like the biggest part of my job, whether it was by email or phone on a daily basis. I'm happy to take care of any of those, and that would also help us sort of refine in the future additional data that the website might have in order to we're always going to have those data requests, but as more data becomes available on the website, they would probably decrease.
Okay. Thank you. And I believe there aren't any other questions. We're moving on to the Comprehensive Development CED's interim report, update and approval. Lindsay Whitson.
Yep, hi, I'm Lindsay. Yeah, this is reviewed for some of you probably, but we have our comprehensive economic development strategy, ceds for short. It is a document that is a regional economic blueprint on behalf of our region. It's part of our requirement as our partnership with EDA, Economic Development Administration. We have to have a 5-year strategy, and that's the ceds. And then every year we have to do an annual interim report, which is due at the end of the federal fiscal year, which is Friday, September 30th. And so tonight, just wanted to go over again, like what a ceds is, what the purpose of it is, and briefly touch on some implementation efforts or processes that have been underway this past federal year. Can you do the next one? Yep. Are you controlling? Okay, yeah. So what is the ceds? How can it be used and why does it matter? And again, some of the implementation efforts, I kind of already went over that. And we are based out of the Atlanta regional office. So we have 8 states, and we're actually one of the few regional agencies that didn't have to do a full update this year because we just did one like a year and a half ago. I was supposed to give that disclaimer and it's in the resolution. So our next one won't be done until 26, our full update. So yeah, what is the ceds? The main purposes of a regional economic development strategy is to build regional capacity, help guide economic prosperity and resiliency, and then regional collaboration. And yeah, it is about the document itself, but it's also about the process, building relationships along the way, finding opportunities for regional projects if possible, and just thinking outside of our own jurisdictional boundaries. So just a reminder of how it can be used. Again, as a partner with EDA, they really value applications that align with and build off of a regional economic development strategy. They want to support projects that align and work with our economic development districts, which is what we are. And then, so again, it can help prepare and strengthen the competitiveness of an application to EDA, but also other programs as well. And like I mentioned earlier, it helps build and strengthen internal and external partnerships, increases regional collaboration, which in return we can reduce duplication in some instances. And then it serves as a way to engage community leaders and hopefully leverage the involvement of the private sector. And then again, just as our partnership with EDA, we do receive additional funding, which allows us to increase our capacity to better serve our members in this area. One example would be the data position started off of some economic development administration funding that we received through the CARES Act. So we were able to identify that that was a need in our region, and now we're building capacity in that area. So next slide, please. This is just some visuals from the ceds itself. It's has a summary background, like what our region, the demographics of our region, the economic landscape, things like that. And then a SOAR approach, which is similar to SWOT, action plans, and then evaluation framework. So performance metrics, how are we doing? And then economic resiliency component. And then those are just the 5 goals. Next slide, please. And so again, this is the interim report that is being produced and turned in next week. And they really just want you to speak of any key changes to the economy, priorities and adjustments to strategies, as well as report on some of the activity that's taken place over the last year. And then evaluation of our progress, and then what high level overview of what's next, if there's anything super different going on from the previous year. So yeah, I can't obviously touch base on everything that we're doing related to our ceds, because it is kind of a very comprehensive plan that touches base on all of our program areas. Just wanted to talk about some of the work that was done over the last year. So again, using those CARES funding, the CARES funding that we received from EDA, housing and economic development staff created a recovery report focused on ways to support low-income housing households, ways that communities could support lower income households and businesses become more resilient in the wake of COVID, obviously, like eviction prevention or programs to help support small businesses in your community. And then the grant assistance program that we have, many of you might know about that, but supporting our local governments with like writing or finding grants, and thinking strategically about proposals that partially stemmed from our CARES EDA dollars. And then as well as being able to provide staff, we were successful in 2 EDA grant applications through EDA's ARPA funding. So one that is in partnership with CARTAR and Upper Coastal Council of Government, focused on creating a more resilient food system supply chain and encouraging locally purchasing power and things like that. And then we have a grant that we were awarded at TJ Cog on behalf of Alamance and Chatham County. So it's an example of that like regional collaborative effort for a grant proposal that was successful. And then we also use the consultant to create the Triangle Trends Report, which is built off of our last year's regional summit, focused on like foresight, and the consultant has made recommendations for incorporating strategic foresight into, I think it was 8 different topic areas. And we're having a kickoff party in a couple weeks, so you might not have heard about that document yet. We're also able to secure some brownfields, $500,000 in brownfield assessment grant funding from EPA. This was our 4th year of applying, and we were finally successful. And then workforce, obviously, we have 3 different workforce boards in our region. So just working to find a collaborative space for us to work together, building those relationships. And then capacity building, there's a lot of instances of that, but we do have staff that are helping, particularly some of our smaller communities, like with comprehensive plan development, ordinance update, and then code compliance support. I know we did, Mid-Carolina just hired a code compliance officer, and they will be going into some of our communities as well. So that is a need that we've heard among our different communities. And then again, I didn't work on all these projects. So I didn't work on the Triangle Sustainability Partnership, but Emily Barrett on our staff started the Solarize the Triangle, but there is of course references of action items in the CEDS that relate to, renewable energy, clean energy type projects. And then, workforce development partnerships is up there twice. So, and then ARPA monitoring and reporting kind of goes along with capacity building and technical assistance. So what's next? Based on what we're hearing from local governments and just an increased recognition from federal and state funding sources, we've dedicated a staff person explicitly to regional food system. That's not his full-time position, but part. In past, we have not had that. So again, working on building relationships in that area and seeing where we can go with that effort. And then workforce development efforts in the region as they relate to clean energy. I mean, as we all know, the BIL and the Inflation Reduction Act have a lot of fundings, both focused specifically on climate change and things like that. So is there opportunities to tap into some of that funding, especially with some of the businesses and type of industry that we're attracting to our region. And then, of course, equitable economic development, understanding that, yes, we have a fairly prosperous region, but not every community and neighborhood is experiencing that. And then we do have an aging population. I think Mary Ward said the other day we're the 8th oldest state in the country. So obviously that's going to increase demand for human and social services. So how can we align economic development with other focus areas more intentionally, like aging and housing and transportation? And then once everyone learns more about the Triangle Trends Report, how can we leverage that? And then would like to have focus groups to continue to build on the ceds. Again, when it was developed, it was right during the year of COVID starting, so it wasn't as, I guess, involved as I would have liked with engagement. And then encourage regionalism where possible. That continues to be a theme. And then think about if there's some of the performance metrics, how they could be better, I guess, make them like more measurable. Some of them are the greatest, obviously. So yeah, I think with that's my last slide.
So would you be sort of, I guess, what I would call a clearinghouse for local governments to call and say, you know, what grants are out there, or we are aware of this one, and can you give us some information? I know our Parks and Rec department recently was approved. I'm not sure who found out about it or who wrote the grant or whatever, but I know we got a nice, we call it our Wreck and Roll van. It's a nice new van where we has shells in it. You can put the recreation equipment in and use for a variety of things. A new vehicle is a nice addition to the rec.
Yeah, I mean, we do write grants like as a one-off service for local governments, but with the grant assistance program, I think we have 13 communities now. So those different communities have paid in based on their population size. There's a different fee. So with that, it is like an effort very much where we start by having sort of a community needs assessment with the community and identify what their greatest needs are. And we can find the grants, write them, help be like the liaison with the funding agency, follow up like it's not successful, things like that. But yeah, if you're not, which Gardner is not a part of the grant assistance program, we could still help with writing grants and answering questions if you think they're feasible, or to see if we think they're strong, feasible proposals.
I just want to make sure folks heard on the call. If you just making sure you can hear.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I wanted to note if this would be an area where you would highlight, I guess, specific community areas. Like I was making a list of kind of what's in the area around like healthcare, health tech, like agricultural tech. Like if this is the area that we would be looking at in developing kind of supports around, how are we highlighting what each area, what our communities do? Like, and like what their specialty is and how we're working across it. But like if there's a spreadsheet or some type of guide that shows where we are.
Like an inventory of
economic development, the clusters, but was it the RTP?
RTRP. Triangle Regional.
They for a long time, they maintained that data. I mean, do they still? I haven't looked. It's been.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That used to be the place to go.
We could certainly look into that and see and be back in touch with that. But yeah,
that's a good idea. So thank you. Yeah.
I'm just thinking like from the regional summit.
Yeah.
I want to lean into what everyone's doing well at. So just figuring out how to make sure that.
And the Triangle Trends Report does, I think, touch base on some of the like different types of economic, like AI and things like that, but not industry specific.
Okay.
Because RTRP they have 14 economic development clusters.
Yeah.
Branched out.
Yeah.
I mean, a storehouse of data that sounds like talking about and a way to leverage that without duplicating.
Right.
And I would just also ask if there's an ongoing conversation to just make sure we know. I know it's not on my calendar. So,
Oh, yeah, we do have like a ceds steering committee and there's like 12 to 15 people on that. And it's really comprised of like different economic development folks trying to be conscientious of different geographics as well. So like, or different geographic areas as well. So there is representation from each county, and there's like some ag folks or an ag individual on there, like higher education. So it's not very big though. It's only 12 to 15 people.
yeah, I have some thoughts, but I'll.
Yeah.
I'll
And honestly,
with
I need a lot of people have resigned and gone on to different positions that don't make sense for them to still be on that committee. So if you have ideas for people to be on that too, that's great.
I have a lot of ideas. We'll come back to that.
Just as a footnote, we have a great partnership with the workforce development in the Triangle J area, but most of the other COGs throughout the state house the workforce development, and so obviously it fits into that parameter better instead of having partnerships. But in our case, that's not part of our COGS profile at this point.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and once the EDA just requires the board to sign the resolution supporting the interim report, and I'm still finishing up like final graphics. So when it's done, we can definitely send it out.
Great.
This will be the resolution. So resolution, right, is placed on your consent agenda for approval to approve the interim report.
Great. Thank you. Great report. I look forward to reporting. And so next we have the TJ Cog office space.
Right.
And you're just going to receive some information.
Receive some information and really interested in your feedback as well. So we're going to review a few options. Actually going to throw another option on the table that we've been talking about over the last couple of days. And would just love to hear your feedback because it's we need to make some decisions in the next couple months about the future of our office space. So I'll give you a little background and some ideas. We're going to go on a quick field trip just across the hallway, and we'll take our virtual friends with us, and then we'll come back and talk. And please ask questions as you have them. So the current space we're in now, which is 4307 Emperor Boulevard, Suite 110, we have occupied since 2003. We renewed a lease with Tri Properties. Tri Properties is the leasing agent, the management entity for this building, as well as many of the buildings in this sort of office park. We signed a lease extension for 10 years with them back in 2013. So the current lease actually expires at the end of July 2023. We lease this space right now at $24.57 per square foot per year. And we have around 9,500 square feet in this space. When we renewed our lease with Tri Properties, they actually gutted the entire suite and did a major upfit. And the floor plan that you see in the Zoom and on the projector is the current layout of our suite. And do you have the clicker? I'm gonna look at the clicker, so I might want to point some things out. And I apologize for folks that are virtual. I'll do my best to sort of explain where things are. Just for a little bit of context, I guess, 5, 6, 7 years ago, the offices, if you're looking at the map or at the floor plan at the top, those offices were mainly occupied by leadership staff. The workstations that are sort of on the left were occupied by staff members. And 6 or 7 years ago, I would say not even half of those workstations were full. We had a lot of empty workstations. Then as you go down on the bottom, this was some of the offices for the AAA director. And then the ombudsman office is the one sort of in the bottom middle. And then next to that is storage and then our kitchen. And then in the middle is the room we're in right now, the large meeting room. And then off to the right are our executive and small meeting rooms. Thankfully, because our staff's awesome and you all are so supportive as a board and as local governments, we outgrew our space. And right before COVID hit, we were actually having conversations with Tri Properties about the suite that's next door to us. We've always had the right of first refusal on Suite 140, which is next to us. That's where we're going to take a quick field trip in a little bit. We were really considering whether that was going to be a good move about maybe taking on that extra space. And I think officers a few years ago, right before COVID hit, we actually went over there and took a look at it. And because we didn't have enough, before COVID, we were like, everybody needs a workstation, everybody needs an office. And then COVID hit and the world changed. And we went virtual. Well, we're still growing though. But what we've started doing is we've just started experimenting with unassigning offices. So a staff member, when they come in, they can, if they need a workstation, they can get a workstation. If they need a private office, they can get a private office. We still reserve the meeting rooms like we usually do. So just a little bit of context of where we were and where we are. We are continuing to grow. And I think as we continue to move out of COVID, I do have concerns about whether this is enough space, both for our staff and for the meetings and to truly be the regional convener. And you'll see from the staff survey and just our own observations, I mean, this room is not large enough for meetings many times. Next slide. So as we've started thinking about our space and talking about it over the last couple of months, we did a survey with staff and said, hey, what are some things that are really important to you? What do you need to be able to do your job best and to serve our local government members and others? So we heard a lot about more collaboration areas for small teams, a better communal room, more private rooms or offices for virtual meetings, bigger conference room with really good technology for hybrid meetings like we have right now, less harsh environment. This space was sort of designed and painted to be pretty plain, and we've never really changed that. But I think we need to give a lot of thought to that moving forward, especially as we rebrand. And a real discussion and sentiment from staff that they don't really think dedicated space for them is necessary if there's more collaboration areas and private rooms for them to have a meeting with somebody or to go in and do a call. We're still in the hybrid environment where, since we've got so many staff in so many areas of the region, it's really up to the supervisor and the staff member to decide what's the appropriate working from the office schedule. And that's the decision that the supervisor and the staff member make, with the understanding globally for the organization that if we need them in the office for a meeting or something like that, then they're in the office. Next slide. So knowing that, we have been working with our broker on just thinking through the options. And one option we wanted to do is we just didn't want to just look at this space, but we wanted to look at a few other spaces in the area that were easily accessible, for our members that are coming from all over the place, and generally met our needs price. And this is an expensive market. And we're really sensitive to price, but also square footage. And that's the market study or market survey that you have. If you're virtual, it was emailed to you today. If you're here in person, you've got a hard copy. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but they gave us 5 Class A options. The range was 23 to 29.75 a square foot per year. The square footage was about 64.50 to 79.41. And really what for me was sort of the deciding factor that I don't think any of these meet our needs is some of them had shared amenities, so they had a shared large meeting room. But we would not really be getting any additional meeting space, even above what we have now if we did no renovation. And so because we've got a good relationship with Tri Properties and they've really given us a pretty competitive offer, which we'll talk about in a second, I have sort of discarded these as options, at least at this point. And the location. Most of the locations were not as good as this one in terms of easy walking access to some restaurants and just being in a nicer sort of park. So next slide. So we worked with Tri Properties several months ago on potential test fits for the current space here. And with sort of in mind, what could we do within these 4 walls and to convert this into more of like a very flexible co-working type space that really tried to accommodate a really critical mission that we have in convening and bringing people together, but still providing that space that's needed for staff. And this is an option, and we've already put some pen to paper and messed around with this even after this was done. But you would basically come into the same doors that you're in now. It says reception on your screen, and you would enter a community room. If you've ever been to the Triangle Community Foundation, it's a very similar concept to what they do, where you're coming in. The idea of the Triangle J Council of Governments is that we're here to be collaborative and bring people together to talk about issues. So we want individuals to come into a room that's inviting and one that you can sit and have a cup of coffee while you're waiting for a meeting. Or if you're a local government employee and you're between meetings and you're in the area, you can just pop in and work. We want to provide that for people. So this community room is sort of that community landing place, that front door to really welcome people. Still have a small conference room off to the right. One thing that you notice here, we really don't have any conference rooms except for the executive that have any windows. So trying to build some conference rooms with some windows that this would actually be able to be partitioned. We have no partition walls right now. So this could be 2 rooms or 1. We'd still have this large conference room, but we cut the curve out of it to sort of straighten everything out. And I don't want to go too long on this, but more workstations. You notice all the offices here have been deconstructed to allow for more of that natural light that we've been talking about for the workstations. So really a lot more collaboration space and places to work together. We've since added some additional focus rooms based on staff feedback on the back side here where those workstations are. We don't think we need all these open office workstations. So based on what we heard from staff, we think we could add some additional offices there. So this is just some test fit, just to give you an idea of what could happen in this space. Next slide. Oh, nope, there it goes. Okay, sorry.
Looks very similar.
So based on our own observations and what we heard from staff, this room's not big enough. And we have been really trying to stress that we need an extra large meeting room. We're going to get better names for these rooms too, once we start doing a rebranding and rethink, but renovate. But for now, so an additional test fit that they gave us was actually going into suite 140, which for the folks online virtually is all the way in the top right. So you would still enter into these same double doors into a reception area. You'd still have a community room, and sort of where our small and executive rooms are now, you'd blow through those that wall and go into a larger executive conference room. And a lot of the stuff in the rest of it is very similar. But this is beginning to try to envision what could we do with some additional space. Now that we have more staff and we have more administrative support in terms of indirect costs that can support a larger space, really thinking about enlarging the size of the office, I think is a real reality. And I'll talk about that in a second. And we'll go look at it in a minute and we'll talk a little bit about the options. So if you can go to the next slide. Yes, sir.
Both of these two that we just looked at, and where would the executive director or assistant executive director or CFO, do they have, I don't see any really room dedicated to them.
Yeah, you want to go back? So Mayor Raines asked about dedicated offices. Right now, and this is subject to change, and we'll talk about that when we go over next door. And this test fit can change. The test fit envisioned only a few folks having dedicated offices, probably the CFO, probably the assistant director for HR. There wasn't a director's office envisioned because I'm on the road a lot. And when I am in the office, if I need to have a private room, I could come into a focus room. And so my idea is if I'm out in the communities 2 or 3 days a week, that's a lot of space that to leave empty. But we could always tweak this based on our needs.
So Lee, I
Yes,
want to just sort of pause on this question about what you're talking about in the parlance of people younger than I am is hot desks versus.
Yeah, a lot like that.
Well, what I in the last few years was placed in an environment where I would say, Sally, great, you get a hot desk. And what that meant was I couldn't leave a picture. I couldn't leave anything of my own. And I have been reading, various newspaper articles and such that employees really don't like that. So I'm just asking, I'm being candid. I'm asking a question about how candid do you think the employees are when they're saying, oh, I'm fine to just float around?
So I think it's a great question, and it's something that we've talked about a lot. And staff members, feel free to weigh in. I think what we've heard is that if we're going to require staff as an organization to come in a certain number of days, that having a dedicated space would be important to them, just like what you said. But the employees enjoy the flexibility of being able to maybe work from home 3 or 4 days a week and maybe only come in a day.
Okay.
And if they're only coming in a day, they understand sort of that give and take, that we really can't have a entire space for them sit that's dedicated.
Okay.
So I think it really.
Their desk really then is at their home and they come in for these
Yes,
provisional meetings.
that is correct.
And I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
that's why I included that last bullet point, because we had some conflicting answers in the survey that yes, in a perfect world, dedicated space would be great, but we don't want to compromise hybrid work.
Mhm.
And so if we had these collaboration areas and private rooms, we'd be okay. That's what came out.
Great question.
My day job, we kind of have a mix. We have people in there 5 days a week, some that are one, some that are none.
Yep.
But we have, I think it's 4 days. You have to be in there at least 4 days to have dedicated space. And if you're not there, then you get hot space or flex space or whatever. So.
Yeah, and we've talked about that as well. We have some folks that do prefer to come in 5 days a week. And we've also talked about, well, if that's the case, then maybe that's a trigger for a conversation about a dedicated space. I think you're really getting to the crux of the sort of struggle we've had, just very honestly, that, this hybrid thing has really sort of made us really think about how we design this space, and knowing we've got to make a commitment for 5 or 10 years, we want to make sure we do it thoughtfully. And the last thing I'll say is the other thing we have to be mindful of is we were busting at the seams before COVID. We've probably added 15, 16 additional positions since then. So if we were to go to dedicated space, you would be looking easily at 50 dedicated workspaces, where now we have 25.
Yeah.
So it would be a significant increase in square footage, and then including meeting rooms and all of that. So yeah.
And I'm
Yes,
saying
ma'am.
because to Sally's point, I've worked in that environment and I refused to come in. That's when I went home based. But what worked in a different, which is similar, was when there was 4 of us that shared the same office and we just coordinated. But that way we actually had personal stuff, but it was intermingled. But it was still our space, but it wasn't, solely my space or whatever. And that can work when there's good coordination. It does not work if you don't have good coordination. Then it's.
Yeah. So one idea that's come up that we've thought about is maybe there's not dedicated offices, but maybe there's dedicated collaboration rooms for a focus area team. And so the mobility and transportation team maybe has one of those, collaboration rooms, and then they can sort of make it their own space and design it how they want. So we have sort of talked about that as well.
It's like a clubhouse room.
Almost like a clubhouse. Yeah, there you go. Secret code to get in, all that stuff. So.
And I'll say too, like pre-COVID, the kind of cube open office maybe worked well, but now most of our staff are joining virtual Teams meetings. And so that open space environment is not working. So I think we have too much in every test fit. These were done in early 2020 because, even if they're here, they're in and off of virtual calls all day long, and open office environment just does not support that.
Yeah.
So.
Nobody foresees this trend changing any. I mean, I'm of the old school a little bit, but I mean, I'm adapting these new ways. So this teleworking and working from home, that's here to stay.
I can definitely.
Subsequent generations are going to want it even more than the current generation. Is that right?
I was just gonna say, just from my personal experience, I think to Sally's point about having the pictures, as long as I'm at home, I have plenty of pictures. So,
Yeah.
so it's hard to
if this is where your base is and you're just there for 1 or 2 days a week.
And even if my base is in the office, I'm still like, there's just so much more, like the nuances of virtual meetings, like even this meeting, it's here to stay, and I don't think it's going anywhere. And the next generation, my child's trying to figure out how to stay virtual in school, and I'm like, Yeah, yeah.
So it actually, Mayor Marshburn, we actually, one of our last hires came to us because we were more flexible than the other regional council they were with. And they wanted to come here because of the flexibility we offered in work.
Well, we're certainly doing that as a town, starting with COVID, and, we're looking at our incentives, it's very competitive in Wake County right now. You have a person for a while and then they move to some other place. So you have to be sensitive to what you can do to enhance both your work environment and compensation and a variety of things.
Yep.
Yeah. I appreciate that you're forward thinking in this and that, the next 10 to 20 years, it might be something completely different. And so the flex space is probably as close as you can get to kind of pushing ahead.
Yeah. So if you can go to the next slide. So the other option that's on the table is the possibility of moving to Go Triangle. Go Triangle is just up the road from us. They're on Emperor Boulevard, very near the Sheraton Imperial. It's where the Regional Transit Center is right now. Go Triangle owns their building, and they have approached us about relocating there into about 18,000 square feet. For those virtually, that's the green area. 18,000 square feet, sort of a self-contained suite. It's on the second floor. Restrooms are this grayish area here. You come in where the blue and the green meet toward the bottom. You would come in there in that hallway, and there are already some offices that you can see that are built in, and then a very large area, open area that could basically be upfit and designed in whatever way we wanted to do it. The other thing about Go Triangle is they've said that other meeting and conference rooms that they already have, they have so for example, they have a large training room on the first floor that I think accommodates 80-ish people, would also be available to us to share. We'd have to schedule it, but it would be available to us to share. So we're certainly interested. I've indicated to their CEO that we're interested in it, and talking with them. They've been very gracious and talking with us and offering assistance and all of that. So just wanted to sort of put that on the table, and we'll talk more about the details in a second. So a little bit more about this vision of co-working. And, before we sort of get into the details of the cost and all of that, as we think about serving our local governments, being an innovation hub, being a place where people can come together and really feel like they can talk and work together on solving problems. This idea of this space being more than just our offices really has sort of crystallized and become sort of a vision. And for those of you that maybe have a co-working space in your community, I was just at one in Wake Forest a few months ago that's fabulous. Mm-hmm. And people from the private sector and nonprofits and businesses come together to work, and they rent an office if they need it, but they're together. They have wraparound sort of services that if you need a business plan, somebody may come in and talk about business plans, or they may have a lawyer there to think about different things. I think there's nothing like that for the public sector in this region. And I think there's a real opportunity to leverage our local governments, our university expertise, other partners to come together in a space to think more collaboratively about what's going on in this region. And so I think there's an opportunity here. And so we've started thinking about this, and that's where you see these test fits, is this is more than just the Triangle J office. This is a place for you to come if you need to do an elected officials retreat. It's a place for the state to host a meeting where 17 local governments need to come in. We've got easy access. We're a partner. We're not, right now, we don't charge. We're not going to be like a hotel and charge for every little thing, a cup of coffee and all that. So that's some of the things we're thinking about with this. So with that, maybe we'll talk a little bit about cost, and I'd love to, we can go next door real quick and just look. So I'll point you now to the spreadsheet. Hopefully it's small. Ma'am?
Can I miscount?
The current, and then.
Yeah, there's really like 6 options based on lease but there's 3 locations. There's
2 locations.
2 locations, 1 location you could expand into.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the potential other one that you.
Potential other one that,
Yes,
yeah, we'll talk about in a
That's the
minute.
one on slide.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So if you go to the spreadsheet, for those that are virtual, there's a spreadsheet. I just wanted to really quickly sort of highlight. Right now, where we are, we pay, right now this year, we're paying $24.57 a square foot. Tri Properties 10 years ago gave us a $31.50 upfit allowance per square foot. So that was a value of about $300,000. And we got a lot out of that at that time, gutting all sorts of great work. So what Tri Properties has put on the table for us now is 2 options, a 5-year lease or a 10-year lease. $26.50 a square foot for 10 years, $27 for 5 years. They've actually lowered the annual increase. It was 2.75. They've offered 2.5% increase. They've also offered a $58.24 upfit allowance, which is about $500,000. A little bit less if we were to lease for 5 years. Understandably, because it's less time for them to amortize that out. Let me go Triangle, and then we'll talk about adding the extra suite. Go Triangle right now is about 15,000 square feet. The offer is $24 a square foot, but it says 29 because Go Triangle's not offering us an upfit allowance right now. So what they've said is they would upfit it, but then they would put it into the lease rate and amortize it. So I've basically assumed the same amount of upfit, which would add $5 to our lease rate. So Go Triangle would be $29 a square foot versus, let's say if we leased here for 10 years, $26.50. 3% escalator on Go Triangle versus 2.5 here. The other thing is Go Triangle's offered to amortize furniture and other things into the rate. So to me, I'm going to set that off because we're going to have to figure out furniture no matter what. So I'm not really dealing with that in this analysis. It's just the space and the upfit. So the other option is, what if we were to expand next door? And if we were to expand next door, it'd be about the same square footage as Go Triangle. I would assume that they would, we haven't really gotten into negotiation, but I would assume that they would afford us the same lease rate and the same upfit that they've already offered us. So let's just say that we took all of it for 10 years. It'd be about $1 million worth of upfit value that we would get. So anyways, that's sort of where we are right now. The other The other couple possibilities, we've had some conversations with the Durham, Chapel Hill, Carver MPO about them possibly co-locating or moving in with us. And the two columns that are sort of in the middle of that spreadsheet show the impact of adding that staff to the cog. And I've said many times, the more that we can bring people into the cog and provide that service regionally, it helps our bottom line and it helps us provide more service. And so if you remember from your budget, we have an indirect rate. And so we have to allocate all our administrative costs across all of our programs, and it becomes a percentage. And so let's take 4307 Emperor at 10 years, the second row. Our indirect rate just with our staff is about 34.1, which is not much of an increase at all from our current indirect rate. So we can handle that very well. But bringing on the DCHC staff drops our indirect rate by 10%. And so that means staff has 10% indirect that are getting charged to their programs that they can plow into direct service. It also means that we can afford a little more space. So even if you went down to the 4307 Emperor at 10 years with the Suite 140, the actual cost to programs, CHC coming in would be less than it is right now. Programs would save money in a bigger space if the MPO comes in with us. So there are a lot of moving parts going on right now. So we're trying to manage those as best we can and make a decision by July. Yes, Don.
Part of our conversation we had 3 years ago and in visiting with Piedmont Triad many times in Lumber River, owning our own space. At one point that perhaps that was not allowable, but is there any space available, or is that just too expensive at this point?
We really have not looked at owning our own space. For us to own, I'm nervous about us owning space because
it brings all the landlord.
Well, yeah, you are, and you're responsible for it, but also staffing at COGS can fluctuate up and down. So, with leasing, you get a little bit more flexibility. Just finding a spot, some land in this general area to build, I think would be really expensive and difficult. But if you can hold on to that thought on the Go Triangle option, I do want to, part of our recommendations may get to a little bit of what you're talking about. I know this is a lot to throw at you, but I wanted to give you an update and sort of let you know where we were and get any feedback that you have. I know we're how are we doing on time, Jen?
7:20. So.
Do you want to just real quickly walk over here and just take a look so I can just show you real quick, and we'll make sure for our virtual friends. Are you going to do it that way, Chantel? Well, Chantel's already got it handled. Man, we got a great set. So let's take you next door real quick. Our virtual friends will follow us, and if virtual folks, if you have a question, feel free to chime in. So just part of the thought for this space going into the space next door is we've heard a lot from staff, and when we have full board meetings, this room just is tough, really tough. And so this space could offer us an opportunity in terms of getting that large meeting space we've been talking about. So.
Sure.
All right.
Please let us know how we're doing on sale.
That's just.
The folks here moved out 6 months ago. More? Yeah. There was a company here called Traffic Tech, and they never, I think they got the space thinking they were going to really expand. And this was before COVID. They had the space and like never had more than 6 people in here, I think. And then COVID hit, and I'm not sure what happened.
Yes,
Used.
I do like those.
So they've gutted this. Obviously, there is a bit of a time crunch on this. They're going to get ready to upfit this second. So obviously we can still lease it, but us having say about design, there's a little bit of a window, October and November, I think. So, and interestingly enough, just for context, the 2 suites in the front, one is vacant. The other one is about to be vacated in October. Winter. So, so we may have the little, I think their whole bottom floor here is about to be vacant other than us. So the thought is that right now, there are a lot of offices in the back, but if you were to come all the way back to these columns, put a wall in, you'd have a 2,000 square foot meeting. Where the meeting room you're in right now is just over 1,000 square feet. So you would basically double your meeting room size, and you'd still be able to have meetings over there. So the possibility of us really hosting some really large regional convenings where times, and some of you have been there where we've had to go with Frontier, or maybe one of your local governments has been very gracious to give us space. We'd have a lot more flexibility here. And, maybe these collaboration breakout rooms, maybe these are the dedicated offices for staff pairings that you're talking about. It gives us a lot of flexibility. And in the analysis that you saw, we could, and just think about if you were to add DCHC, that's 10 additional staff. I don't think I said that. So we'd be bumping 55 staff, full-time staff about. So 15,000 square feet for about 55 staff. That's pretty reasonable. As a comparison, I'm not going to have time to go through this. Campos in the capital area is getting ready to move to Fenton, and they're going to pay more. We're going to pay about $500,000 for 15,000 square feet, and they have 16 staff. So we're being really, I have to brag, we're being really tough. About the same number of square feet. The lease rate here is less than Fenton or other places right now. So, and our indirect rate, and so that's sort of this thing. What's the ceiling lower? Just me. I don't know, good question. Lower. Sure, we can. And the other thought about a couple of thoughts that Jenny and I talked about is if we didn't do a lot of demo here, we could really maybe value engineer just some of that upfit cost over there, where we're going to have to probably do a lot more demo and there'd be a lot more cost. The other possibility, and I don't know if Tri Properties would agree to this,
terms of how they would mobilize. Could they somehow renovate this? And then we could move here temporarily as they're renovating that. And I think that would be a lot less productive than, you know, completely moving or blowing out the whole 2 suites. So I think this gives us a little, possibly some work.
These are campos, so that you can get in office.
I don't know what campo is. Now, you know what it is.
There's also another cost. Which actually does add up.
First, let's talk about just the logistics of changing, right? Moving addresses. We still have issues with invoices being sent to an old PO box we had in the RTP 10 years ago. Because that is a great point, because a lot of our local governments, we're all bureaucratic animals, right? So it's like, your address is what? Well, it's been this for 20 years. Oh, well, we have RTP address. No, that's not it. So that's good. All right. Well, unless y'all just want to sit down and let us we'll probably add a little cost.
Yeah, the work. I was a big but I know the coach, yeah, what's up? Yeah.
Every idea you have changes.
You've been busy. Yeah, I like it.
So the only other thing I want to sort of put on the table, and then I think we've got a little time for some Q&A. I know we've got to have consent and then we got our closed session, but as you all know, the RTP is beginning to reimagine and develop their Rtp Hub site. It's, for those of you that may not be familiar, it's where the EPA used to be. It's where the Frontier is right now. It's where the box yard is for RTP. And there's a tremendous amount of really interesting development that is beginning to take place at RTP. And they're calling it the Rtp Hub. And we began talking about that a couple of days ago, and we're like, well, you know, we're the hub of local government in the region, right? And our origins are as the RTP Planning Commission. And you know, as we've been thinking about this, just honestly, I haven't really had a in-depth conversation with Scott Levitan and RTP to see what possibilities there may be at Rtp Hub. And a lot of what they're talking about there is bringing all sorts of different people together, you know, to talk about issues. And there's going to be a hotel on site, and there's going to be retail on site. And I have no idea what the lease rates are going to be there, but, you know, RTP's been a wonderful partner for many years. And I know some of our local government members have, particularly Durham County, and I think the city have given quite a bit of money to help develop that site. And so maybe there's some opportunities there. So I'd like to have a conversation with Scott to see, I think one of the buildings is scheduled to be delivered like late 2023. So could line up. We'd have to figure out something for a few months, but might be a possibility. So I think I want to, if it's okay with the executive committee, I'd love to talk to Scott before we sort of plow forward. So let me give you a couple of recommendations and thoughts on next steps. And again, would love to hear your thoughts. So right now, based on the value of the upfit, the accessibility beyond the first floor, timing and a less complex move, and this is nothing about Go Triangle, they're a wonderful partner. But as everything is right now, financially, logistically, it feels like this may be the preferred option. But there are a few tweaks to the offer we have from Tri Properties that I definitely want to go back to them, and some thoughts on Go Triangle to just see what they would say. So we would certainly at Tri Properties, bullet 1, want to have an understanding on if the same terms would apply to Suite 140 as they do to this. And that's the upfit allowance, the lease rate, the escalation rate, all of that. One thing we heard from our staff that I think is a really good idea is here, there's not a good outdoor space for anybody in this building. There is a space sort of in the middle of the parking lots, but I think having some dedicated outdoor space, especially if we end up having this much of the first floor, hosting a lot more meetings for lunch, for conversation, for collaboration, and we would work that into our upfit allowance. But I think that's something Tri Properties really ought to consider. I don't think this is a deal breaker, but I think we ought to at least have a conversation with Tri Properties on whether we could get a dedicated outdoor entrance into our facility if we were to take up all this space. And if we were to do that, it could really open up possibilities for evening meetings and other things, and maybe things we could actually charge for, depending on the type of Commissioner Carver and I were talking about that earlier today. And then one thing that I don't like about this space is it was written into our lease. We can't have any signage outside of the suite. And so our wayfinding is not what it should be here. And so I'm not asking, I don't want to sign on the front of the building, but we're a public agency and we need to have better wayfinding. So I think that would be something we need to do. So those are some ideas on what we want to do as we negotiate here. And then I think the next slide is what I'd like to go back to Go Triangle with a counter offer. And I'd love your input on this. I think Go Triangle has to match the upfit offer that Tri Properties has given us. And that may be through an upfit allowance or a reduction of the price per square foot, whatever it is, it's got to match. I want to talk to Go Triangle about ownership equity potentially in the building. They own that building. Go Triangle started at Triangle J. We're both supported by the same local governments, and we've got to pay we need to pay our fair share, but maybe it should be a shared facility. And maybe what we're paying in becomes ownership equity to get to some of that ownership that you were getting to, Mayor Raines. I'd want equal co-branding of spaces. I don't want it just to be a Go Triangle building and then you got to find the Triangle J. We need, spaces to be co-branded equally. And then outdoor space for staff and visitors. And then the other thing about Go Triangle is what is their future space decisions and how do we fit in on that? Are they moving to the hub? Are they only going to be moving to like 54 and Miami Boulevard? Are they staying where they are? I think those decisions could have a big impact on how I feel about Go Triangle. So thank you for bearing with me. This is one of the biggest decisions we're going to be making in the next several years. So I know it took some time, but I really wanted to give you a full briefing and see what questions you had. So I'll be quiet now.
No, you're fine. You're at your start time.
I am.
No, well.
I appreciate in-depth work that has gone on for so long on this. I mean, what you propose makes sense. I also want to make sure you feel you have the flexibility. You are closest and you've got your discretionary support that if you need to make decisions, you can, that we have empowered you for that decision making.
Appreciate that.
Remind us again of the timeframe we're working on here, the decision made in the.
Yeah. So our lease is over July 30th, 2023. So
About 8 months away.
so time is getting close. But I feel, I'd be a lot more nervous if it was 3 years ago and we had never worked virtually. So I want to make the right decision. And that's another thing about Go Triangle is I'm not sure, even if we were to pick Go Triangle, we'd be able to design the space in a thoughtful way and get upfit done in time. But I don't think that needs to be a determining factor because I think I would hope Tri Properties would maybe extend us month to month, or if worst comes to worst, we could go virtual for a month or two, or we could maybe show up on one of our member government's doors and maybe take a little suite for a few months or something. I think we've got options. So I feel good that I don't feel like we're not going to be forced into something and having to make a rash decision because of time.
Lee, I want to say, like Kathleen did, that I appreciate all of the thorough work that you went to before you brought it to us. I want to really encourage you to check into the Hub RTP option because all of these the various options to stay here or moving to Go Triangle. I can see how they could work, any of them, if they're managed right. But in either location, this is like, mid 20th century office space and layout. And the Hub RTP is trying to be more urban and more dynamic. And you mentioned a hotel nearby and the whole notion of a hub being a place where it's just it seems like in theory, at least, a place where there's more potential to be the kind of hub that you're wanting us to be.
Thank you.
And I would add on to that. I think that it'd be good to have the conversation, but also just acknowledging that the price is probably going to be a lot higher. And if you can't lock that in for a really long time, it's going to continue to escalate.
Yes.
And so cost is going to increase. And I want to make the distinction that it's probably 6 minutes away from where we are right now.
That's correct.
And so I'm probably leaning more towards the side of locking in where we are.
Sure.
But I think you've done a really good job. And I know the navigation of all these conversations to get to this one spreadsheet it's taken months. And
it's taking a little while.
Yeah, walking these spaces. Yeah, there's a lot of thought going into how you use it, and I trust that you'll bring back the best recommendation.
So if the executive committee is amenable to this, what I think I would ask is if you all are comfortable, I can go talk to Hub and then maybe bring back some additional information to the officers and let them sort of chew through sort of those different options and then work with the officers on sort of a final recommendation. And this is something I think we do need to obviously bring to either executive committee or the board of delegates. And I can work with the officers on exactly how we'll get that to the governing body for a final nod of approval, if that's acceptable to this group.
That makes sense.
I also want to add that Frontier is always open, and any staff member that wants to hang out at Box Yard should feel free. So the space is still central.
And we do.
Yeah.
We've had several staff gatherings at Box Yard and other things. So, yep. we enjoy the space. Okay. Anybody have any questions that are virtual? And if, or feel free to give me a call too, and I'm happy to talk to you offline.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think we can move to our consent agenda. And the items on the consent agenda also shown. Oh, you're fine. If there's anyone that would like to remove an item for consideration, I just want to make sure I give you opportunity to pull it if you'd like. If not, we'll move forward.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? And Chantel, if you will call, roll call.
Thank you. I will say the jurisdiction. Aberdeen. Archer's Lodge. Chatham County.
Mike Dasher votes aye.
City of Durham.
Aye. Adriana Freeman.
Durham County.
Tim Martin.
Hillsborough.
Kathleen Ferguson, Hillsborough, aye.
Johnson County.
Butch Lauder, aye.
Lee County.
Bill Carver, aye.
Moore County. Orange County.
Sally Green, aye.
Pittsburgh.
Pamela Baldwin, Town of Pittsburgh, aye.
Princeton.
Don Rand's, aye.
Kansas. Wake County. Is there anyone I may have missed?
I think it broke up a little. This is Rebecca Salmon. Sanford says aye.
Thank you. Anyone else I may have missed? Thank you. And we do have a vote for consent tonight.
Well, thank you. I think that completes consent agenda.
You got chair report, my report, and then we have a really quick closed session.
So we're moving to our executive director report.
Yeah, and I have talked quite a bit this evening, just a couple of quick updates. I know Ms. Baldwin's on the call, and we appreciated being able to work with Pittsburgh on identifying a interim town manager for the town of Pittsburgh. And Mr. Blodgett, who is a retired manager, I think started in Pittsburgh on the 19th. So we're excited to have Hazen in the region as Pittsburgh looks for their permanent manager. So thank you, Ms. Baldwin, for allowing us to help you.
And thank you all very much. I certainly do appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Three other things. One, and we'll say more about this at the next Board of Delegates meeting, but in the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of awards that have been announced for Triangle J. One is by the U.S. Water Alliance. They awarded the Jordan Lake One Water effort, which we like to call JLO, which is a cooperative effort among multiple local governments in the Triangle J and Piedmont Triad region and the state and the federal government and nonprofits around just the award was around cross-sector partnership. Our friends at Piedmont Triad Regional Council work with us on facilitating that group, and we were very, very honored to get that recognition. We also were made aware of a NATO, National Association of Development Organizations, Impact Award for the great work that our Area Agency on Aging did around vaccine outreach. And they will be recognized at the NATO annual conference in Pittsburgh in a few weeks. So just continued evidence that our staff does a wonderful job and really appreciate all their good work. And the other thing is just a personal thank you. I know many of you know that my wife has been in the hospital 10 days. And it was looking like she was not going to come home today, but she is coming home. I think she's home now. I made her take Uber. Kidding. Honey, I love you if you're watching, but no, her parents were there and they brought her home. We're still going to have some work to do, but the kids are glad mom's home, and man, I'm glad too. So I appreciate the thoughts and the text, and staff's been great. And I say this enough. I feel like I don't say it enough. We got a great staff. They stepped in. I couldn't make it to a meeting in Moore County, and Lindsay took it, and Matt's going to something for me tomorrow, and Jenny stepped in and acting director, and Chantel helped me with board stuff. And so we got a great team. So appreciate it. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
It is also Lee's birthday today.
Happy birthday. Oh, man. If I would have known, I'd have brought you a whole cake.
We brought him one.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, so for the chair's report, I'll just say my birthday's on Friday.
Okay.
I don't really have any updates. I will say that this month kind of got away from me. I also want to share a thank you. I think a lot of you have reached out around the passing of my sister, and just saying like, I am barely hanging on. So just, I'm not going to talk about it, but I would like to kind of figure out what it is that I'd like to lean in on. And I think our report this today from Lindsay definitely highlights an area that I have been kind of passionate around, equitable economic development. And I would love to get feedback and hear ideas from folks around that. And other than that, that's all I have. I'll have much longer, 30, 40-minute reports as we go. It's always a good meeting.
No worries.
But thank you.
Yep.
And I know we're going into closed session. Do I need to vote?
You need to read it completely and then ask for a motion in a second, and we have to do a roll call.
Okay. So I'll ask for a motion to consult with our employed or retained by public body to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged as allowed by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11 A3. And I'll ask Chantel for a roll call vote.
Need a motion in a second.
A motion, I'm sorry.
Second.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you, Kathleen.